guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Pazza Podcast. We are back this week after another defeat, this time at the hands of Bologna in the Supercoppa Italiana, losing 3-2 in penalties after a 1-1 draw during regular time. This is going to be a short episode this week, guys, just a kind of a recap and then a look forward as what Inter has got for the next few matches. But let's dive into this match versus Bologna, a rotated squad for Kivu in this seemingly diluted tournament that has become the Supercoppa, a tournament that used to be a preseason match versus the Coppa Italia winners versus the Scudetto holders, which has now been inflated, diluted, whatever you want to say, into a money grab for not only the FIGC, the Italian, I'm sure, bureaucracy has their hand somewhere in this. It's a mess. But even before the match, Kivu reiterated that he didn't feel that Inter or Milan deserved to be in this competition. And like I said, it used to be a preseason competition match, just one-off match versus those two. It has now been inflated into a four-team playoff, if you will, in Saudi Arabia, where it used to be played in Italy, I think in the Stadio Olimpico in Rome. So make of it what you will. It's a tournament that I know a lot of people going into this were wanting Inter to take it seriously because it was a chance at silverware. Rightfully so. Anytime you can get a chance to put your hands on a trophy, that's important. But again, this is a preseason type tournament that has been pushed on these clubs to be a mid-season tournament, forcing them to travel to Saudi Arabia for this. And I mean, make of it what you will. Kivu did rotate kind of for this squad. Not sure what his actual thoughts were going into it, but if you look at the context clues and whatnot, it seems like this was a tournament that Inter, if you win, great. If not, so be it. And it kind of reflected in the play. Unfortunately for us Inter fans, we had to watch a match, a team, a squad that reflected that mentality, kind of. And again, say what you will, if you don't agree with that mentality or agree with the way that they came out and played this match. The reality of it is the guys have 8 days rest in preparation for the next league match, where we are top of the league. So in my eyes, not that concerning, but I understand why people are a little upset with the result here. But getting back to the lineup, it was, like I said, a little bit of rotation by Kivu. We had Pep Martinez, who everybody's been calling for. He gets the start and goal. Jan Bisek steps in at right center back. Then Derai comes in at center back. Bastoni retains his place there on the left side of the defense. Luis Enrique gets yet again another chance, a string of chances he has been given since the Dumfries injury. Barella comes in midfield again. Zielinski playing that Registo role that Hakan so eloquently makes his own now that he is out. Even though he was on the bench for this match, Zielinski retains the starting spot. Mkhitaryan, our favorite mozzarella old man, comes in at left center mid. DiMarco comes back in at left wing back after a few game break. And then Thuram and Boni. Lautaro gets the rest. Thuram and Boni up top. We're just going to hit the highlights here. First half, we had in the second minute, Inter fans didn't have to wait long. I actually wasn't even at the house yet. I get off work at 2 p.m. Kickoff was at 2 p.m. for this match. I didn't make it back to see the first goal live, but it was a brilliant goal. The high press that everyone talks about Kivu implementing paid off and pressured Bologna into a mistake, a poor pass out of the back, in which Bastoni intercepted, capitalized on. And it was a brilliant run by Bastoni after the interception and an absolutely peach of a ball over the top to Thuram. Great finish by Thuram too, and Inter flying high up 1-0 within the first 2 minutes. And this is kind of where Inter under Kivu maybe, I don't know, the sample size isn't as big as under Inzaghi, but I feel like under Inzaghi, this is a match where Inter steps on the throat of the opponent and puts 3, 4 goals behind. And Inter, after this, seemed content to just be up 1-0 for the most part. And say what you will, if that's the right mentality. Again, like I said, this match, the mentality, who knows what the mentality of these players, of the coach, of the staff, all that was going into it. We don't know how they were taking the Supercoppa match, but it seemed like they had the mentality of, if we get away with a win, fine. If we go to kicks, fine. If we leave here with a loss, fine. And I don't know, playing with that in the back of your mind, if that leads to mistakes or not. But in the 31st, 32nd minute, we have another Jan Bisek handball in the box that goes for a penalty. I don't know what Keefe was looking, why he had to wait 2 to 3 minutes before going to VAR and then look at VAR again for another minute. It was a pretty obvious penalty in my eyes and my viewpoint. And it's Bisek. He's prone to these errors. He's a good player and everything, and sometimes the ball just bounces the wrong way. But it's consistently now the third or fourth time that Jan Bisek has given up a penalty in the box for handling, and I don't know. As much as I like the guy, it has become a problem. But make no mistake about it, it was a handball. And of course, Orsolini steps up, and he's one of those guys that is gonna, right when he steps up, it's gonna go in the back of the net. So drew level Bologna for right before the break. I think that was the 35th, 36th minute actually when the goal was scored, and Inter goes in at half tied on level with Bologna 1-1, and it was in that halftime 1-1. What can you do to flip the balance of this match? And there really wasn't much that Kivu could have done. I think Inter were a better team, especially Bologna looked better in the first half, but in the second half, Kivu did something to kind of flip the balance. I don't know if it was tactically what, but Inter came out in the second half looking like the better team, and the opportunities came for Inter, and it's the same old opportunities that we see and chances that we just don't put away game in and game out. And Inter go knocking and knocking and knocking at the door. We have Di Marco with several half chances, Lautaro when he finally came in with a chance, Luis Enrique with a chance on the right side, and unfortunately none of them went in. The one big thing in the second half that's a talking point, really the only talking point in the second half, is the penalty. Inter awarded a penalty, Boni stepping in front of the Bologna defender and drawing a foul. Keefe points straight to the spot, live time, then makes his way over to VAR, checks it, redacts, redraws, withdraws, whatever you want to say, the penalty. And rightfully so, in my opinion. It didn't look like a penalty. In lifetime it did, but whenever you look at it slowly, Boni does put his leg in front, make contact with the Bologna defender, and then fall down. The only issue is it is the exact same penalty that Napoli received in our match when we traveled to the Maradona, losing 3-1, that kind of tilted the balance of the match. And that's the issue, is the consistency here. How is it a penalty for Conte and Napoli, but not for Inter and Kivu? And that's, we're beating a dead horse at this point. But how many managers have come in for Inter? Mourinho, Spalletti, Conte, Inzaghi. You can name more that have come in and complained about how Inter is treated. and it's just a joke. If there's something going on that makes and it's week in and week out, Inter is getting screwed. How many games at the end of last season did we see Pavlovic tripping Turam in the box, not getting called? Uh, Baskirotto for Lecce, his arm being out and it striking the arm and not being called a handling. There's more offenses here, but then turn around and it happens to Inter and it's a point to the spot, no mistake about it. Again, I don't think it was a penalty, but if you're going to call it for Napoli, you have to call it for Inter. So that's the only really complaint that I have. And again, it's Kifi. In my opinion, he's the worst official in Serie A. He's an absolute bum. Anytime I see him, whenever he's officiating one of our matches, I know it's going to be an absolute shit show. And yeah, that's just all you can say about Kifi. He's a terrible official. I was actually at the match last season, Inter versus Udinese, where he sent off Inzaghi for seemingly nothing, and he had been having an absolute terrible match, Kifi, and it's just a joke. Serie A officials are a joke. But we go to PKs, kicks from the mark, whatever you want to call it. Officials would prefer you to say kicks from the mark since there's actually no penalty being given. And it's I don't know why anybody's surprised at how this turned out when it went to kicks. We should have known that we weren't going to do anything. How many times have we seen how terrible these players are at kicks? If it's not Çalhanoğlu or Zielinski, then there's no chance. You have a lesser chance of scoring a kick with the remaining players on our team than you do scoring one. And another thing that kind of makes me think that Kivu maybe wasn't taking this competition so seriously, he pulls off Zielinski right before the kicks. Now, granted, I think Zielinski did pull up with a little injury. I haven't seen any report of what the injury could be. There's nothing out there, so maybe it was just cramps, fatigue, something like that. But he pulled him out. He's a stud from the kick. He had Çalhanoğlu and Pio on the bench. He was even going to bring Pio into the match and decided not to. Didn't bring Çalhanoğlu into the match when it was apparent we were going to kicks. Three people who probably would have converted their spot kicks did not come into the match or stay in the match. And so take that how you will. For me, that kind of signals Kivu being content with coming home after that. And again, it was pitiful. Lautaro stepped up and scored the first one. It was a shit kick. If the keeper for Bologna had guessed the right way, it was going to be saved. Bastoni, exact same kick as Lautaro, essentially. The placement was not great, and the keeper guessed the right way, and it was an easy save. Barella, we don't even have to talk about how bad that was. He skied it. And then Boni. Luckily, this guy is only 21, 22 years old. He has time to learn from the mistake and maybe change his penalty procedure, but that was just pitiful. Absolutely pitiful. If you're going to do something like that, the Jorginho, the Balotelli, the whatever you want to call it, at least have some conviction. If you're going to do a penalty like that, you have to be confident. And there looked like there was no confidence in that kick. So from now on, Boni, just step up and rip it. Rip it. That's all you can do. And Inter goes home 3-2. Like I said, loss on penalties. De Vrij steps up, makes a brilliant kick. And it wasn't enough. And again, the guys go home. It's a lot of people are bitter going home without a trophy here. For me, I understand their sentiments, but I'm glad that these guys do not have an extra match that they have to play before this run of games we have in January. And it's the least of my worries for this season. If this is the Coppa Italia semifinals or something, yes, I'm upset. But Supercoppa, it's a made up game, and the gods righted the ship because we do have Bologna, Coppa Italia winners from last year, playing Napoli, Scudetto winners of last year in the final. So it's justification, whatever you want to say, and maybe the rightful two teams are in the final. Got some takeaways from this match. Big one, like I said, rotated squad kind of. There were really no risks. Çalhanoğlu wasn't risked by Kivu. His pre-match words saying, we shouldn't even be here. his post-match words where he didn't seem too concerned. It just made me feel like Kivu wasn't too concerned with this match. Again, it was a match. If we won, great. We'll take the final maybe seriously, but if we lose it, it's not that big of a deal. These guys need a rest. I don't know how you guys feel. Let me know down in the comments if you agree with that or if you think that Kivu was taking it seriously. For me, it was just one of those matches. Second takeaway, Mkhitaryan needs to stay in Saudi Arabia with Inzaghi. Another performance in a match where Mkhitaryan starts and does absolutely nothing. The giveaways, no shots on goal. It seems like it's becoming a habit, a theme. And the quicker we can get Mkhitaryan out of this midfield, I think it's for the better for Inter. On the flip side of that, another great performance from Zielinski. This guy is a stud. It doesn't matter where you put him. Regista, left center mid, right Mezzala, wherever you want to put him, he's going to impact the match. He had a great match here. Hopefully there's no injury. And hopefully moving forward, this is the guy that's first on the team sheet instead of Mkhitaryan. He is an impact player with his dribbling, with his passing, all around, just elevates the rest of the squad. So hopefully we get to see more Zielinski in the league and in the Champions League moving forward. Pep Martinez, he had a big save at the end of this match on Giovanni Fabian, former Inter Youth Academy player. It was a great save. No mistake about it. Absolute great save. I think Pep Martinez, even in the penalty shootout, made some good saves. I will say there were some moments that looked a little nervy. Crosses, distribution. There was one where Bologna was through on goal. I think it ended up being offsides anyway, but the handling on the situation, it was in the second half. It looked clumsy, and it's just a situation, with that big save at the end, that's everything anybody is going to remember from the match. But if you watch the whole match, there was shaky moments and lacks of confidence. So Kivu has a decision to make. Do you go when you're top of the league, keep with Sommer, who has been back there for now the entire season in the league and has you top of the league despite some errors? Or do you roll the dice and try Pep Martinez, where if it doesn't work out and there's some big blunders there too, and you start slipping in the league, then it's all on you. It's a very tough decision for Kivu. Interesting to watch and see what he does for the rest of the season there. Bastoni, he needs a rest. He needs a break. He did brilliant in the second minute of the match to provide the assist. But after that, just same old typical Bastoni performance for the last month just wasn't great. And I think he needs a rest. I think Augusto needs to come in. Di Marco has gotten a rest the last couple matches. He did play a full 90 here. But I think we need to see Augusto maybe the next match in for Bastoni. We'll see. Bastoni definitely needs to get his head right mentally, especially, the weight of the Italy World Cup failure qualification and then slipping with Inter. Some of his words pre-match about he'll probably stay at Inter, stuff like that. It's a little concerning. And reports coming out that, Barcelona Premier League squads are looking at Bastoni. Who knows? I'm not ready to hang up and say we need to sell Bastoni. He's definitely one of the few in our squad that is a world-class player, has world-class potential. And you don't get rid of players like that easily. So we'll see where this goes. It's definitely something to keep an eye on, but I think he needs a rest over the next couple matches. And speaking of the next couple matches, it's a big January for Inter. Big next few matches. If you look, our next few matches, we play at Atalanta and Bergamo, home against Bologna, a rematch against the Bolognese side, where hopefully we can get all 3 points, at Parma, and then at home against Napoli. 4 huge matches: Atalanta, Bologna, and Napoli. Those 3 are in the top half of the table. Napoli competing with us for that first spot. So very big next 4 matches. If you look at Napoli's next 4 league matches, they're at Cremonese, who are not a sleeper team. At this point, usually teams fall off that have a hot start that are usually lower level teams, but they haven't been conceding goals with Baschirotto back there. And they're a tough team. They just tied Lazio 0-0, 0-0, whatever you want to say. They lost to Torino before that, but I believe they beat someone of note before that match too. They've got some, and they're good wins, and they're not conceding goals. Napoli then travel to Rome to play Lazio before coming home against Hellas Verona, and then wrapping up that 4 game league skid against us at the San Siro. So Napoli, you could maybe say, maybe make the argument, has the easier next 4 games, but they also have that Supercoppa final coming up on Monday. And then Milan. Milan play at home against Hellas Verona, at Cagliari, at home against Genoa, and at Fiorentina. So a pretty easy cupcake schedule unless Fiorentina figure that out. I will say Cagliari is looking pretty decent. Just drew to Pisa. I was watching that match before coming on. But I think Cagliari is a decent side, especially at home in Sardinia. But Milan definitely have an easy 4 game skid coming up. So Inter has to take advantage and really get 12 points out of the next 4 matches if possible. So I think getting that extra rest, not having to play on Monday and travel back from Saudi Arabia is important for Inter. And maybe it was the right decision to not play a full strength squad and rotate and not take this tournament as seriously. Only time will tell. We'll see. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today, guys. That's all we're going to touch on. We'll be back next week after the Atalanta match and maybe do a little deeper dive onto what we're going to see for the remainder of the season. But appreciate all the support. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And as always, Forza Inter.